Our new duchess resembles a sow, snidely recorded in his notes Magister Ulrich, the royal secretary. And yet, our lion, Duke Reinhardt, for some reason tied his fate to hers. In May of the year 1417, the nobility of the kingdom of Viridia was seething with indignation. Their sovereign had dared to marry an overripe lady who could hardly be called suitable for his brilliant throne. Serafina was 45 years old, an age when few would dare to suggest that she could still bear heirs for the state. But even this was not what shocked the courtiers most of all. Behind her trailed a whole plume of turbulent romances, questionable liaisons, and scandals, whispered about throughout all of Viridia and the neighboring lands. And now, this woman, a mere marchioness, was set to become the Duchess of Viridia. In Viridia, at the end of the 14th century, to be born a woman meant being either a bargaining chip in foreign political alliances or prey for greedy neighbors. But fate had prepared trials far sterner for Serafina of the House of Alaric than a mere marriage of convenience. Her father, Lord Alaric's, was one of the most powerful landowners in the southern part of Viridia. Rich lands, impregnable castles, and fertile villages. All this was meant to be inherited by his children, but fate denied him sons. 2 boys died in infancy, having barely drawn a breath in this world. The only surviving child was a girl. Serafina was born in the year 1372. Robust, with lively, bright eyes, as if fate itself had decided to leave her in this troubled world as a challenge to all woes. Lord Alaric, a stern man accustomed to the clang of weapons and the smell of earth, looked upon his newborn daughter with mixed feelings. He understood that the entire weight of his legacy, the lands, the untold wealth, and the responsibility of his house would one day fall upon the fragile shoulders of this girl. "I will have to leave everything to her," Alaric would say, looking at the child with anxiety. "But who will protect her? Who will be her shield if I am gone, if my blade is broken?" His heart tightened with a fear akin to despair. How could a delicate girl, not yet aware of her lot, maintain the lands for which dozens of greedy barons and knights were ready to fight? This thought, like a heavy burden, never left him until his dying day. Lord Alaric passed away too soon, and his widow, Lady Isolda, was left alone with their child. The citadel of Asmara, perched on a high, wind-swept cliff, became their last sanctuary. Behind its thick stone walls, Isolde hoped to shield her daughter from others' unclean claims. She knew that an heiress with such a fortune, with such extensive lands, was too tempting a prize. At night, Lady Isolde could not close her eyes for long. She heard, like the sound of hooves, tales of kidnapped brides, of marriages concluded by force and deceit. Her heart was squeezed by a cold, sticky horror. "It will not happen to you, my girl," she whispered, kissing Serafina's hot forehead. "I will give everything, even my life, just to not lose you, just to protect you from this cruel world." But most often, what we fear most, what we anticipate with bated breath, is precisely what comes true. The 9th of May, in the year 1389. This day remained forever etched in Lady Isolde's memory, like a brand. She set out with her daughter for the nearest chapel for morning mass. Nothing, it seemed, foretold disaster. They took only one old, frail servant with them, and this proved to be a fatal mistake. Halfway to the chapel, Their path was blocked by a group of armed men, like phantoms from a nightmare. One of them, Count Gareth, a knight in heavy armor, commanded in an authoritative voice, "Give me the girl, immediately, or I will order you all killed, right here." Lady Isolde held her daughter tightly, but her hands trembled like autumn leaves. "This is my child, my only light. You would not dare, you have no right," she cried out. Serafina was torn from her mother's arms and carried away, her screams of sheer terror ignored. 2 days later, the exhausted, grief-stricken Lady Isolde stood before the Duke of Viridia. "Reinhard I, Sovereign, my child has been abducted, taken by force, like the lowest peasant girl," she said, barely suppressing her sobs. "She was married against her will. I know it. I feel it. This is a true crime, a sacrilege. Such a marriage cannot be recognized by the Church, nor by you, my Duke," she pleaded. Duke Reinhard listened thoughtfully to the inconsolable mother, and genuine, deep compassion flashed in his discerning gaze. "I will send men, the best warriors," he replied firmly. "No one has the right to break a girl's destiny, to break her life by force, even if he is a count." A detachment under the command of the noble Sir Calin soon set out. Serafina was found in Count Gareth's distant, abandoned castle. The Count was the son of one of the northern barons, known for his cruelty. Indeed, the forced wedding had already taken place, and the girl had been coerced into pronouncing the fatal yes, a word that shattered her entire life. But when the Duke's men appeared in the castle courtyard, Serafina managed to throw open a heavy window and scream, a cry full of despair. "He is holding me by force. I am not his wife." The soldiers, like a storm, broke down the doors and burst inside. The Count Abductor was subdued, and Sir Calin gently led Serafina, trembling and pale as wax, outside into the light of day. Sir Calin, a tall, handsome, and brave warrior, personally escorted her back to the citadel of Asmara. They rode side by side for long hours. The silence was broken only by the measured, comforting clip-clop of hooves and the rustling of leaves. Serafina was still shaking from the humiliation and fear she had endured. "You are free now, Madame, and safe," he said softly, his voice low and velvety, afraid to frighten her. "No one will dare to touch you again while I live." She raised her eyes to him, in which unextinguished fear and vast, silent gratitude were mingled. "You saved my honor, sir," she whispered faintly, "and this was more important than any wealth." Returning to Duke Reinhard, Sir Calin confessed not only the brilliant success of the mission, but also that his heart, the heart of a warrior, had been ignited by a deep and pure love for the rescued lady. Duke Reinhard, learning of the young warrior's fervent feelings, merely smiled, and his smile was full of wisdom. "Well, if you love her so much, take her as your wife, my friend. I give my full and unconditional consent to this." But one seemingly insurmountable obstacle remained. The Church, at the insistence of the abductor's influential relatives, had recognized the forced marriage to Count Gareth as legal. And until the bishop found formal grounds for its annulment, Serafina's fate remained unresolved, suspended between fear and hope. Sir Calin would not tolerate this humiliation and injustice. Soon, he tracked down the offender at his ancestral estate and resolved the matter of honor on a duel, releasing several accurate arrows into him. Be that as it may, soon no one opposed their lawful marriage. Sir Calin returned to the citadel of Asmara. This time, he arrived not as a valiant savior, but as a suitor, asking for her hand. Kneeling, Sir Calin asked Lady Isolde for Seraphina's hand. Lady Isolde looked at him for a long time, as if trying to read his soul, and then, with a bright smile, she said, "You have already proven that you are worthy of my daughter's heart. Be her reliable protection and strong support." Soon, that same month, their modest but heartfelt wedding took place. Calin and Seraphina were truly happy for the first time in their lives. They genuinely loved each other, and this love was their reward for all they had endured. It seemed the story should have ended here, coming to its bright conclusion. A fine warrior, the beauty he saved, a love sealed with a vow of eternal fidelity. But their happiness, alas, did not last long. After 6 short years, in the year 1395, the Black Guest, the plague, took the life of Sir Calin. Seraphina was alone again. Her world had collapsed once more. A young widow, wealthy but essentially defenseless against the world's greed. And once again, she could become easy prey to satisfy others' selfish ambitions. That is why she traveled to the capital, Viron, to her uncle, an influential military governor. He perfectly understood that his niece had to be married again, not for passionate love, but for the sake of preserving her position, her lands, and most importantly, her safety. Thus, in October of the year 1397, 23-year-old Seraphina became the wife of Baron Valerius, an experienced warrior, a widower, a reliable man, and one of the most respected figures in the duchy. The wedding was loud and lavish, but it passed without much romance or thrill. Yet, in this marriage, Seraphina found a cornerstone, that same reliability, and the opportunity to breathe easily again without constant fear. Baron Valerius turned out to be a faithful, caring husband, a man of action. Their union was strong as steel, and Seraphina gradually gained confidence in the future. Baron Valerius settled his young wife in the capital, Viron, and soon her name began to resonate at the ducal court. Her beauty, maturity, and innate, unfeigned pride made her a noticeable figure in the ceremonial halls. But most importantly, she possessed an inner, unbroken strength, the very strength that allowed her to withstand the humiliating abduction, the loss of her first husband, and the years of solitude. "Look how Madame Valerius carries herself," whispered the envious court ladies behind her back. "She does not falter even next to the Duchess Beatrice herself, maintaining a royal dignity." Indeed, in Duke Reinhardt's entourage, Seraphina looked almost brighter than Duchess Beatrice, his first wife. Tall, stately, with soft chestnut hair cascading like a wave over her shoulders, and eyes the warm, autumnal color of honey. She knew how to wear expensive gowns, so that the heavy silks and soft velvet seemed to be created just for her, emphasizing her nobility. But her beauty was not cold or repellent. Seraphina knew how to charm even the most distrustful with a sincere smile, and in conversation, she could display a sharp, lively intellect. Duke Reinhard often noticed her in the crowd of courtiers, and held his gaze longer than strict court etiquette permitted. Seraphina bore Baron Valerius 5 children, her own flesh and blood. She loved her children sincerely and selflessly, often foregoing outings, noisy balls, and social entertainment to stay with them, to listen to their laughter. But in the year 1410, when the great battle of Aertes roared, and the duchy celebrated a crucial victory over the northern enemies, Seraphina's home was shrouded in heavy mourning. Baron Valerius, her third, such a dependable husband, died, and she was once again left alone, like a rootless tree. Why has the Lord taken my support again? Why has he left me unprotected? She whispered, clasping her hands in a sorrowful, desperate prayer. This time, she was nearly 40 years old. Many at court believed she would not marry again, that she would not find a husband. Too many losses, too many severe trials had fallen to her lot. Seraphina then donned deep mourning clothes and withdrew into herself, like a seashell, departing for her distant, quiet estates. And for several years, no one saw her at the ducal court. No one heard her voice. Meanwhile, great changes were taking place in the ducal castle. In the year 1416, Duchess Beatrice, the first wife, passed away. Duke Reinhard was once again a widower, alone. Enemies gossiped that without a new, strong wife, capable of bearing an heir, the Duke would not maintain the precarious balance in the state. He needed a wife, not just a beauty, but a woman capable of strengthening the dynasty, bearing a legitimate heir, and uniting Viridia with another influential European house. Seraphina spent all her time in quiet prayers, managed the affairs of her extensive estates, and did not even know that the wife of the Duke of Viridia, Duchess Beatrice, had died. Therefore, when the Duchess Livia, the sovereign's sister, invited her to visit in the spring of the year 1417, she accepted the invitation without any ulterior motive. "I shall go," she told her eldest daughter, adjusting her dark mourning dress. "It is merely a courtesy visit, and perhaps it will be pleasant to see old, kind acquaintances again." She had no idea that this invitation was part of an elaborate, long-planned scheme. Duchess Livia dreamed of introducing her widowed brother to Seraphina, hoping that this strong woman would become his new, worthy wife. That evening, when Seraphina entered the ceremonial hall, Duke Reinhard kept his eyes on her for a long, very long time. "The years have not touched her. Not at all," he later said to his close confidants with admiration. "There is an inner strength, a depth in her gaze that you won't find even in the youngest and most blooming ladies." Seraphina, accustomed to gossip and scrutiny during her years in the capital, did not expect such keen interest from the sovereign. "Sovereign," she said, bowing her head slightly in a respectful gesture, "I did not think you would remember me, a simple widow, after so many years since our last meeting. How could I forget the woman whose honor and destiny I once helped save?" Reinhard answered softly, his words full of tenderness. These words, spoken so simply, shook her to the core. The memory of that humiliating, dreadful abduction, of that fateful yes, came back to life in her mind. It was he, the Duke, who had sent Sir Calin to her aid, and it was due to his grace and intervention that she had escaped shame and forced marriage. The court ladies, noticing the Duke's unconcealed attention, hissed like snakes in the grass. "He has found himself a match. Imagine that." "She is 45 years old. She is hardly a girl anymore," they whispered, smiling maliciously. Could he not find a maiden, a princess, who was younger, from a more distinguished line? Why does he need this widow with a past? "She won't be able to give him an heir. The dynasty will be broken," others added, with poorly concealed joy. "This union is madness, sheer recklessness." Even Magister Ulrich, the royal secretary, acerbically recorded, "She resembles a sow, and our lion, our sovereign, has chosen her. But Reinhardt paid no attention to the vicious tongues or the whispering. In his eyes was something greater than cold political calculation or momentary infatuation. In Serafina, he saw not only a woman, but a faithful, wise ally. A woman who was intelligent and strong, capable of sharing with him the heavy burden of the ducal crown. On the 2nd of May, in the year 1417, in the small town of Sanok, Duke Reinhardt I of Viridia took Serafina as his wife, and soon a solemn coronation in the main cathedral of Viron made her the first lady of the country, the Duchess. The cathedral hall shone with thousands of candles, and the choir raised its voices in triumphant song. As the heavy ducal crown settled upon her head, Serafina felt a strange, dual mixture of feelings. Fear of the future, awe at the moment's grandeur, and a quiet, deep pride. Lord, give me the strength to be worthy of this crown, of this trust, she whispered to herself, inhaling the scent of incense. And at that moment, despite all the wicked whispers, she became the Duchess of Viridia. When Duke Reinhardt I led Serafina out to the people, presenting her as his lawful wife, a cry of surprise mixed with murmurs rolled through the crowd of citizens. No one expected that the sovereign, the powerful widower with a great throne behind him, would choose a woman whom the courtiers called an overripe widow, one who also had such a turbulent, scandalous past. But Reinhardt seemed not to hear the poisonous remarks or the sarcastic gossip. He held her hand firmly, confidently, as if to show everyone, here she is, his chosen one, his choice, and it is steadfast. You are next to me now, Serafina, he said quietly, leaning towards her ear when the choir finished the hymn, his breath touching her cheek. And no whispers, no lies will change my decision, will make me doubt. Serafina closed her eyes, as if absorbing the strength and warmth of those words, which were a shield for her. She knew too well how easily this cruel world strips a woman of the right to simple, personal happiness. But today, on this solemn day, she stood beside the Duke. Despite the malicious tongues and the dissatisfied, envious glances, she quickly proved to everyone that beside the sovereign, she was not just a beautiful, silent ornament. Serafina managed her lands with true skill, even during the lifetime of Baron Valerius, her second husband. And now this rich experience proved useful to her at the court in Viron. Duke Reinhardt began to consult with her on matters of complex, high politics. He especially valued her firm judgment on issues concerning relations with the eastern neighbors. Serafina spoke plainly and clearly, unafraid of His Majesty. Reinhardt, we need a durable, unbreakable alliance with our neighbors. Viridia is too often, too easily drawn into bloody wars. Peace is not a sign of weakness, my Duke, but true strength, if it is secured by wise and honest treaties. And increasingly, it was her calm, balanced advice that tipped the scales toward prudence. Alongside politics, Serafina managed to win the trust of Princess Amelia, Reinhardt's daughter from his first marriage, a young but already lonely girl. The young princess, deprived of a mother's affection and warmth, surprisingly easily found common ground with her father's new wife. Together, they strolled through the blossoming gardens of Viron, played the lute, and read ancient prayers. You are not a stranger to me, mother, the girl confessed one day, clinging to Serafina, and this was the most precious acknowledgement. The Duchess's heart trembled with tenderness. She knew she would no longer grant the Duke legitimate heirs, but she could give him something more important than the throne: the warmth and comfort of a family. The Duke, despite all the cruel gossip, increasingly cherished his Serafina. He saw her true dignity and her amazing ability to stand tall, even when the entire court was against her, when she was all alone. In the evenings, he often stayed alone with her in her chambers, listened to her reflections on life, and even allowed himself a rare frankness that he could share with no one else. But happiness, alas, is not eternal. It does not last indefinitely. Just 1 year after their wedding, Serafina began to feel a strange, growing weakness. First a light, persistent cough, then shortness of breath, nights full of insomnia. "Trifles, my Duke. Do not worry," she assured her husband, hiding her pain. "This spring malaise will pass, like all sorrows." But her face became paler, like marble, and her figure thinner, more translucent. It was as if the illness was pleased to suck the last of her strength, the last drop of life from her. The physicians summoned from all corners of Viridia, and neighboring duchies merely shrugged their shoulders. "It is perhaps consumption, the wasting disease," one of them whispered, afraid to say directly to the Duke's face. "We are powerless. Her fate is in the hands of the Lord." The Duke did not want to believe it. He refused to accept this harsh truth. He brought the best healers, prayed before ancient icons, and made generous offerings to the churches. But this brought only temporary, deceptive relief. Yet, until the very end, until her last breath, she remained the Duchess. Even as her strength faded, Serafina continued to participate in secret councils, discuss state affairs, and support her husband. She allowed herself no public complaints. She did not want to be seen as weak. Only in the silence of her chambers, by the flickering light of the candles, did her lips faintly utter prayers that the Lord would grant her a little more time beside the one she could, finally, after all the losses, truly call her own. May of the year 1420 was warm and sunny, as if spring itself wanted to soften human grief. But in Viron, there reigned silence and the heavy, oppressive breath of mourning. Serafina Valerius, Duchess of Viridia, passed away. The illness, which was whispered about at court, proved stronger than any prayers, any medicines, and the brightest hopes. The burial took place in Viron, in the main cathedral, where all the dukes and their wives were laid to rest. The mournful tolling of the bells sounded across the city, and people flocked in crowds to say farewell to their duchess. For the common folk, she remained not an arrogant lady, not a foreign princess, but a woman who knew how to listen, to help, and to carry herself with incredible, unbroken dignity. Serafina managed to leave her bright mark on history. She proved that a woman, reviled and scorned, could become a worthy duchess, a wise counselor, and a guardian of the throne's honor. After her death, Duke Reinhard withdrew into himself, as if behind armor. He became silent, often retreating into long, solitary prayers. However, fate and duty demanded that he continue. The duchy needed a dynasty, an heir, and therefore, a new wife. Just 1 year later, he married again, fulfilling his duty. But in the memory of contemporaries, a bright image remained forever. The Duke's third wife, the Duchess with the difficult past, was for him not merely a political ally, but the woman he truly, sincerely loved, until the very end.